Larger scale laser engravers, then stick around because in this episode we're reviewing the Sainsmart LC-60A. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of James Dean Designs. If you're new to the channel and love laser and CNC work, hit that subscribe button in the corner to get all the latest videos. Now, a few months ago I did a review of the Sainsmart Genmitsu Jinsoku LE-1620. It's a small, portable, lightweight laser that still packs a bit of a punch with the strength of the laser module itself. Well, at the opposite end of the scale is its bigger brother, the Jinsoku LC-60A. And as you can see, there is a considerable size difference between the two lasers, although the laser module itself is exactly the same and a lot of the components are very similar. So what we're going to do today is talk through some of the specifications, show you how to build it, then do some testing, and finally a review at the end. So let's get stuck in and see why you might be interested in the LC-60A. Start with the physical measurements of this machine. Well, front to back we are talking 850 millimeters, and side to side we are talking about 900 millimeters, depending roughly where you put the air assist pump. Now within that we have a cutting area or an engraving area of 600 millimeters by 600 millimeters. I did take a look at the limit switches to see if we could get more out of them by tweaking them a little bit, but you are pretty much on the maximum limit as it already is. So 600 by 600 is about what you're going to cut. Now all of the axis on this, or sorry, the X and Y axis on this are driven by belts. So that is perfect for laser, gives us faster acceleration, smoother movements. The X axis is driven by a single stepper motor. The Y axis is driven by dual stepper motors to allow everything to be more synchronized with its movement. The Z axis is a manual adjustment, so you've got a little knob on the top allowing you to take this up and down so you can focus your laser accordingly. Now the maximum travel of that is 50 millimeters. However, the height of the machine itself can be lifted up or down with the legs that are included with it. Laser itself is a 20 watt input laser that equates to about a 5.5 watt output. This is the same laser that Sainsmart use on a lot of their machines, so we are very familiar with its capabilities. You can do tons of engraving with it, lots of different substrates and materials, acrylics, cardboard, wood, ceramic tiles, all those type of things. You can do some cutting with it. We're talking fairly thin materials like 3mm plywood, basswood, that type of thing. You probably not really want to go over about 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters. It will start to struggle at those depths and you'll end up doing lots of passes to try and cut through it. But for a desktop machine, it is a fairly powerful laser. Now at the front of the laser we have an inbuilt laser shield. Now this just is a little bit of a safety element. It minimises the risk of you looking directly at it and damaging your eyes, that type of thing. I would always say if you've got the laser running, make sure you are using glasses as well, just for safety. But yeah, it minimises the risk for people walking past, pets, animals, that type of thing. Underneath there we have the air assist nozzle pre-installed. Now this is machined out of brass and is basically almost like clamped on with a little threaded screw, so it can be taken off. But air assist is essential for any laser work. It just makes everything much cleaner and much nicer basically, especially when you're doing cuts, because it minimises the amount of overburn off it. Now driving that air assist nozzle is the air assist pump. This, for the size of this pump, it is fairly powerful. It gives you just enough air to be able to do nice engravings, minimise the amount of overburn without it being too noisy. It has a variable adjuster on the front of it, so you can turn it down and up, but let's face it, 99% of the time you're going to leave it on maximum power. Now the nice thing about this is it's wired directly into the control board, so that just makes our life much easier. In certain pieces of laser software like Lightburn, you have the facility to turn air assist on automatically. So whenever you start your job, that pump kicks in, runs all the way through your job, and then turns off automatically when your job is done, just making life much easier and minimizing the amount of potential time that motor is running. Now onto the control box at the front. The control box has a few buttons on there. We've got an emergency stop, obviously always a useful feature. We've got the on and off power button. We also have a button that has a dual purpose, which is a test fire and to home the machine. Test fire just fires the laser to very low power, allowing you to move things about and get the correct position that you're after. The home button, hold it down for a long time. This runs a homing sequence which basically just allows the machine to know the coordinates that it is working from, or a fixed start position that it can begin from. Now within that control box is a 32-bit control board. Now just to keep things basic, what that literally means is it's a bit faster, it's a bit smoother when processing things, and ultimately it means your stepper motors end up being a bit quieter as well, because it doesn't need to do something like called a double step, which is potentially what makes them sound even noisier. So basically the noisiest thing on this machine is actually the air assist pump, which really isn't that noisy at all. The last thing to mention, although this isn't really considered a portable laser because of the size of it, it is ridiculously light. It's about 5 or 6 kilograms. There's no weight to it at all, so you can literally fold it away, lean it against a wall, hang it on a wall, that type of thing, because of how light it is. So whilst it does take up a big area, you can move it about nice and easily to minimise the amount of area it takes up when you're not using it. That's the machine in numbers, and some fairly impressive figures when you're thinking about a laser machine doing up to 600mm wide. Let's move on and see how easy this is to get assembled. My right hand side, which will be your left hand side, we've got a cutting mesh. This allows the laser to pass all the way through your material when you're cutting and stops it hitting the solid bed underneath, so it can be very useful. We've got the air assist pump, we've got the laser and its wiring loom. On the laser you have a small laser shield as well as the air assist nozzle already installed. Then we've got the basic components for building the frame and laser itself, including the control board and the wiring loom for that. On the left hand side we have the power pack. This has been supplied with a European and a US plug. I'm in the UK, so I will need an adapter for that. We've got the depth stop for the laser to set the focal point. We have a marker pen. This is when can be useful for when you're trying to engrave through clear material. A few scraps of wood to do some tests. A USB cable for connecting it to your PC. A pair of laser safety glasses. And crucially, all the nuts and bolts to help assemble all this. And that's what we'll do now. So for the most part, we're going to be following the standard instructions, and we begin by laying the frame out. Your y-axis are the two that has the carriages with the stepper motors, as opposed to the other one that has the stepper motor on the end and is clearly labelled as your x-axis. Also pay attention that one of these joining arms has a piece for a cable tie. This should go on the left hand side and towards you, the same side as your control unit. We're going to connect this frame up using M5 8mm bolts with these angle brackets just to complete the square layout. Your frame is assembled, make sure obviously everything is tightened up, and also make sure none of the extrusion is twisted in relation to the extrusion that it is joining to. The other thing that's crucial, make sure everything is square. Easiest way to do that is to take a tape measure, measure diagonally one way, measure diagonally the other way, and they should be exactly the same measurements. If something is out of skew, then slacken some of the bolts and just readjust until you get both of those diagonal measurements the same and everything is square. The next thing we're going to do is install the feet or the end plates. These come with a protective film over the top. They can be a bit fiddly, but you can get your nail underneath there and peel it off to reveal the nice black acrylic. We're going to install these with some M5 12mm and 16mm bolts on each corner of the frame. We're going to attach the control box to the front of the frame. Feed it underneath through one side, back out of the front of the frame, and it will fit right here against this piece of extrusion. We're going to be using M4 bolts and M4 T-nuts. These drop into the extrusion themselves and then just through the holes and tighten everything up to hold the control board to the frame. Use one of the provided cable ties to clip the cable to the clip already in the frame. Place it in, pull it tight and make sure it's held in position. Place the x-axis on top of your two carriages, keeping the stepper motor the same side as the wiring loom. There is a little trench on top of the carriages to allow the x-axis to sit in. If yours is not sitting comfortably and it's rocking a little bit, adjust the carriages back and forth slightly until this drops in nice and easy. We're going to be using some M5 30mm bolts. These just drop straight in, aligned with the holes underneath, and then tighten everything up. Next we're going to drop the cable tray in onto the x-axis. This should drop nicely. There are pre-cut out holes that go over the existing Allen bolts. So just place that in, and we're going to use some M3 8mm bolts to hold that in place. So just screw those in and again tighten everything up. Next step is to install the laser module itself. For ease, I've spun the frame around so you can see it being fitted, and it just goes over here using some M3 5mm bolts. Now there are preset holes for this to go onto, so simply align them up, take the bolts, pop them through, and again tighten them up. To fit the depth stop holder to the front of the frame using the M5T nuts. These are hammerhead nuts, and what that means is they can just slide straight in and then tighten them up once in place. So at this stage you can go around and finish off connecting the wiring loom. Some may already be connected, but others will need to be plugged in. They are clearly labelled so you know which one goes to which, and the connectors themselves will only go in one way. So make sure you are connecting the male connector to the female connector in the right rotation. Any cables that go along the gantry, make sure they go into the cable tidy tray and then zip tie them in to make sure they are secure. The two cables for the laser, these will connect to the control board underneath the carriage. Cable ties should hold everything firmly, but still allow a little bit of movement just in case you need to shuffle anything back or forth. On the side of the Z carriage is a holder for the cable tidy. When I came to attach this, I noticed the one that is already around the wiring loom and the air hose tube is actually quite tight. And I don't know if the camera can see that, but it's basically constricting the flow through the air pipe itself. I also then noticed at the bottom there is a slight kink in this. So what I'm going to do is take this one off, cut it off, and reposition it slightly to make sure the air flows through with no kinks or restrictions on the pipe itself. On the air assist pump, we connect the rubber hose to the air outlet nozzle, push that on, make sure it sits on there all the way in, and on the opposite side we connect the power cable into the port and again push that all the way in. The machine itself can be raised 90mm up with the addition of these 4 legs that come supplied. They go underneath pre-drilled holes, and use the remaining M5 30mm bolts to hold them in, simply tighten them up. This extra height allows you to laser deeper material or use something like the rotary attachment if you're doing cylindrical objects. As an easy way to store the legs when not in use, consider something like thin magnet strips. Put one on the leg, one on the frame, and you can just simply attach them to them to keep them safe. Setting the correct focal depth of the laser is extremely easy. Lift up the laser shield, place the depth stop underneath, lower it down until it just touches the top of that stop, and that's when you know it is deep enough. Pull it back out, lower the laser shield back down, and you're good to go. Connect your USB cable, also connect your power cable, and make sure that the emergency stop has been turned and released. You'll know this because it will pop all the way up. When you turn the machine on, you'll hear the fan kick in on top of the laser module. The button below it can be used for 2 purposes. One is a test fire. If I press this in, you should see that light up now. It allows you to position the laser easier for finding the corner of your material or when you're trying to align it for a job. Pressing it again will turn it off. If you hold it down for a longer period, it will start the homing sequence. The homing sequence for this machine is the bottom left. The USB stick that comes with the machine is preloaded with some software, some test files, and the driver, which is crucial to allow your machine to talk to your PC or laptop. To install that, open the exe file, install, allow it to process, and once it's finished, click OK. To double check this is installed correctly, you come down to the Windows menu, type Device Manager, go into the Device Manager option, and under the port setting you should see something similar to the driver that we've just installed, CH340, and this is on COM5. Whatever COM number yours says, make a note of that. It will be useful later on when connecting the machine. The 2 pieces of software on the USB stick are Laser GRBL and Lightburn. Laser GRBL is free, but its functions are limited. You can do some basic things like photo engraving and import SVG files to be able to do outlining, but you can't really create anything within the software. To use it though, simply come up to the COM selection and select the COM number your machine was on. We saw that ours was COM5, so I'll then click the connect button. It connects to the machine and you can then start to use it with its basic functions. There's more information in my other videos if you want to learn how to use laser GRBL. The other piece of software on the USB stick is Lightburn. This is a paid for piece of software, but it does come with a 30-day trial in case you just want to have a play about with it before purchasing. If you really want to get into your laser work, this is the piece of software that you need, and it is well worth the investment. You can do everything from engraving photos, creating designs with it, and controlling your laser all in one location. It really is a powerful tool. I should point out the version installed on the memory stick is 0.924. There are newer versions available of this, so if you are considering buying it, you may wish to download it directly from the Lightburn store. The setup of Lightburn is fairly simple. Once it's installed, it will prompt you to set up your laser. Now if this is the first time you're using it, the screen will be blank. But the easiest thing to do is to come down to Find My Laser. It will automatically start to search for the laser connected to the machine. It does take a second. But once it's found your laser, click Add Device. Continue through. As we saw earlier, it homes to the front left position. You can choose to leave auto home on or turn it off. Obviously the difference is basically when your machine starts every time, it will home automatically if this is turned on. We'll leave it on for now. Click Next and then click Next, and your laser is now installed. It's the GRBL LPC. So we'll click OK. It's changed the COM down here to number 5, and that's connected to it automatically. If you want to double check, you can come to the console area. We can see a list of commands in here already. If we type $, hit enter, and it will give us all the settings from the machine, and that's a safe way to know that it is connected. If you want to learn how to use Lightburn, check out the beginner's guide in the top right hand corner now. So 15-20 minutes on the physical setup, a couple of minutes on the PC, and you're up and running nice and quickly. Now let's move on and see what this machine is actually capable of. I've already mentioned in the video, this is the same laser Sainsmart have used on multiple products, including the LE-1620 that I've already reviewed. So let's recap what this laser is actually capable of and then move on to some new projects. So everything with the previous laser was done without any air assist, and we began by cutting a wolf's head out. We then moved on to see what painted metal came out like, and the results were quite nice. A bit more experimenting with clear acrylic. Now a diode laser passes straight through clear acrylic, so you have to find ways to engrave on the surface, and these were my experimentations on the last laser. Ultimately you can use this to make a light up sign. Here's a cheap example just illustrating that point. Now let's move on to the new laser. I began by painting a ceramic tile. Use a white tile, paint it black, and then ultimately you laser the paint off the top of it, and we did a beautiful Mayan calendar. The results of this came out extremely crisp and sharp, so much so that I decided to do another experiment with a famous character from a series film that I will not mention for copyright reasons, but again, beautiful results, and I love doing this method of a painted ceramic tile. We then moved back to doing some cutouts with the air assist installed now to see what the results were. I started off simple with a nice cutout of a dog, and again no overburn, so some very nice clean results. Got a bit braver, did a bigger piece of artwork. This would look lovely when finished off and mounted on a wall in a front room or in a bedroom. We then moved on and did a larger engraving of a sign. I raised the laser above the official focal point, and what this means is less lines per millimeter when you're engraving, and it just means you can go a bit faster. The lines may not be quite as crisp and sharp, but ultimately because you're doing it in a bigger sign like this, you're still going to get great results, and it actually does it in a faster time. I did a bit of a test on a canvas. Now this didn't come out great, but I think that was because it was an extremely cheap canvas. It may be something that I experiment more with in the future, just to see if we can create nice pieces of art. I then went back to doing some cutting out, but using a simpler design, and I think this is where this laser really starts to come into its own. Large scale pieces but with simpler designs. You can then finish those off and make them into nice wall pieces, and ultimately have nice displays of art or pieces to sell. The final test was with some sprayed metal again. This was left out in the rain, unfortunately, that's why it looked mottled, but we got some very nice results from lasering the paint off the aluminium, and again some nice clean lines. Some small projects, we've done some larger projects. It's time to give a review of the machine. So we're going to start with what did I like about it. Well, it may seem obvious, I like the size of it. Being able to laser work up to 600mm square is quite useful, and the reason for that is larger work typically demands higher price tags. So if you are selling your work, you're likely to recover the cost of the machine and start making profit much faster. The other thing is, lots of people have smaller lasers, not as many people have larger lasers. So the market you're competing in, again, is a bit smaller, leading to higher price tags. So that is definitely a plus point. The counterbalance to that is this is still a diode laser, so larger pieces do take longer to produce. So do remember that when you're considering this laser, but ultimately, bigger pieces, you can demand more money for them. The thing I love about this is the integrated air assist. Now the market is flooded with lots of lasers, lots of cheap lasers that don't even consider air assist, and it's nice that they're finally starting to integrate them into this. Everything from the pump that's automatically connected to the control board through to the air assist nozzle, again, that's pre-installed when it arrives. It makes a big difference to your laser work, so it's brilliant to see that this all comes in one package and you don't have to start buying extra things on top just to get what is an essential feature for laser work. Other things I like about it, well, the weight of the machine. Being nice and light, it means that even though it takes up a large area, you can put it up on a wall, store it elsewhere without needing to lug something heavy about. So that is a brilliant feature. And some of the additional basic controls on the front of the control box just make it much more user friendly to do things such as positioning work and doing the test fire without always having to come back to the machine to fire it, then go and reposition stuff up. So all nice features. What do I dislike about the machine? Well, they're the little niggly things, if I'm perfectly honest. So the laser shield on the front of the laser module itself, it's held in by two little threaded bolts. Now, there's no washers on those, so every time you lift it up and take it down, it's loosening or tightening the bolts, in accordance with how many times you do it. And ultimately, you either get to a point where it's really loose or it's really tight and you have to almost force them off. So a couple of washers on there would make a huge amount of difference to how user-friendly that part is. The other thing is they provide you with the legs to lift this up, in order to do thicker material or the rotary attachment. What would have been really nice is just to give you a couple of little clips or something to attach those legs to the frame rather than having to store them separately. I hate when you have accessories that you have to store elsewhere, not with the machine itself. So again, little niggly things, but little areas that could be improved. Overall, it's a great machine and you can do so much with it because of the size of it. And ultimately, it's always backed up by Sainsmart's brilliant customer service, which is the main advantage to buying from quality companies like Sainsmart. So that is always something that goes in the pro corner when we're doing a review like this. Would I buy it? Definitely. Because of the size of it, so you can get so much done. So it is nice to have that option, being able to do the large end as well as the small end. Is it for you? Well, in a true YouTube review style, that is honestly up to you. If you have the size to take this and this falls within your budget, it is definitely one that should be on your shortlist when you're looking for lasers, because you can get quite a lot done with it. If you are considering buying this laser, then do check out the affiliate links in the description area below. They don't cost you anything, it just helps me to keep the channel going and it really is appreciated. That is everything for today's video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Final thanks always goes to my patrons. If you want to get involved, again, check out the Patreon links in the description area below. I'll see everyone on the next video.